So I was married for 25 years, and for the last 10 years or so of that, we were doing a lot of marriage counseling. And unfortunately, that marriage didn't work out. So it was a really sad time for me, and I learned a lot through that. Met with the elders at church, and they were actually very involved with that whole process. And they assured me that I was biblically eligible to remarry, but I really didn't know that that was in the cards for me.
I was approaching my 37th birthday and have spent, most of those years single, a little bit dating here and there, but never having been married and really wanting marriage. For me, as I entered 2024, as I often do when I start a brand new year, will choose a word for my year. I chose the word love this year, but little did I know what God seemed to just sort of surprisingly and mysteriously have planned for me. I'd seen beautiful examples of marriage in my life, with the primary one, most impactfully being my parents' marriage. They have a beautiful, healthy marriage that I very much desired to be able to also have in my own life, a beautiful, healthy marriage. 2024 was a turning point for that.
So I happened to be visiting Wheaton Bible Church one Sunday, and I was walking out of the main service, and lo and behold, at the front desk, I see a former marriage counselor of mine, and that was Charity. I approached her, I reintroduced myself, and she seemed to not really, well, I think she could kind of recognize me, but she didn't know where she knew me from.
I did recognize him and just knew that I wasn't gonna ask, where do I know you from? Because I did know that there's a strong chance that I could be seeing a former client, which he quickly was honest with me about, told me who he was.
I should say that when we were chatting at church, Charity was clearly putting out the vibe of, you don't have a chance with me, buddy. This is not going to happen.
Not rudely.
No, she was very polite, but it was like drenched in platonic vibes, the whole conversation.
I know how to do that well.
She was, yeah,
I'm
the
a
wall
professional.
was up. Strong wall, but very polite. I asked her some questions about the church, and I was lightly flirting with her a little bit.
Heavily flirting.
Okay, apparently she
I
could
knew
tell
he was
that
interested.
Yeah, I was stretching that conversation out as much as I could, and it turned out to be an hour-long conversation. Everybody was gone in the church by the time we were done, just about.
I agreed to coffee, thinking that's a nice thing to do, nice and briefly, and then never see this person again. But that did not happen that way. We talked at the coffee shop for about 4 hours.
After a very awkward side hug, yes. We talked for 4 hours.
During that conversation, things shifted for me. I think it was not shifted for you. You knew where you were at.
I did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When Jack very assertively and gently but confidently expressed why he was, that he was interested, that he was there to, enjoyed my company and my conversation and things with him, but that he didn't just want friendship.
I put my cards on the table, and I fully expected to be shot down, but and she looked rather, I don't know, not surprised, but she had concerns, which are very understandable. It was very clear to me that Charity cares deeply about marriage.
There were a lot of complexities that I knew immediately in that coffee shop conversation when something shifted in me that I was like, wow, if something could work out here, I think I would love to continue getting to know this man. Knew at this point, okay, this is a former client, he's been married before for quite a while, has children. And so I was presenting these complexities to Jack, not as a, you better take care of these, fix these complexities, but was also very impressed by how quickly Jack was just willing to, let's just talk about them. Let's just have this conversation, talk about what had happened in my marriage and how that ended, especially post the counseling that we had all done together, where I had been fighting with them for their marriage. I had to look into the ethical side of dating a former client, and we were well outside of the time that is necessary to pass. It just seemed like God's hand was on it. It felt like doors were just opening for our relationship to blossom.
I felt like there was a great peace the whole time. I was very surprised, actually, in me what was happening. It was sort of like, God, if you want this to happen, so be it. If not, that's okay. At some point, not at some point, it was actually very, very quickly.
Within a week of that first coffee, we had realized we could actually date, or at least
she gave me
explore that
official
option.
permission to ask her out on a date, which I did very promptly. And we had our first date at Texas Roadhouse, and then ended up at the church, and in the church parking lot, talked until 3 a.m, at which time my oldest son called and said, "Hey, Dad, just checking up on you, making sure you're okay." And that was very interesting, the role reversal there.
I was leaving the next morning to go to Indiana for the total solar eclipse that happened earlier this year, to be with many of my family members.
As Charity's sister, I could see it. I could see this peace. I could see this joy. It wasn't a giddiness, an infatuation. It was God. God was right there in the middle of her meeting Jack. Actually, when she first told us about Jack, I said, "Charity, you could be married by the end of the year." And I believe he's going to use them in an amazing way.
It has been such a wonderful journey to journey with her. I know this is going to be difficult for me because Charity has had a special place in my heart for the last many years because she's my oldest daughter. And when Charity and I sat down in a coffee shop there during the eclipse day, and we talked about this new relationship that she was embarking on, I was confident that Charity would sense the Lord's direction. I was not concerned about her listening to the Lord to say, what direction should I take?
So then we started dating and seeing a lot of each other, just we both own our own businesses, so that was very conducive to spending time together.
We commented really early on that to each other, that those conversations and the depth of conversation and the frequency of those conversations and how long we would chat with each other felt like a week passed in our, like literal time, a week passed, but it felt like we had spent 3 months of a normal dating relationship. So each week just felt like we knew each other in a much more deep way than most people would in that sort of timeline.
What does love mean when people say that I love this person? And is it an overwhelming sense of emotion where you can't really help it? You feel fond emotions for a person? And when I try to reconcile that with Scripture, I don't see that anywhere in Scripture, really. I see love as a choice. Having been through marriage, and I know that all the romantic feelings are normal up front, but it ultimately is a choice. I had a very powerful experience in prayer that was, I've never had anything like this happen before. It was as if I felt God was present in the room, and my spine was tingling, my arms are raised. I don't do that normally. Just a powerful, worshipful experience, and was really just giving this relationship to the Lord and just saying, whatever your will is, that's what I want. But in that moment, I felt just an overwhelming sense of just the need in this world for marriages that are healthy, because marriage is supposed to be a picture of Christ's love for the church and that relationship there. And it's rare to see that kind of powerful love between a husband and wife. So in the midst of that, I had this overwhelming sense that I need to love this woman well. I realized I want to choose to love Charity. So I told her that pretty early on. It was almost accidental at the time. From that point on, I've loved this woman, and that has only grown in depth.
Surprisingly, that admission of Jack telling me he loved me did not scare me. And all along the way, I remember Jack telling me very honestly where he was at emotionally and where he was at commitment-wise. But this is the kind of man I want to commit my life to and want to connect to in the dance of life, to follow well. So that was a really peaceful thing for me, and also, when I think about it a little bit, surprising how quickly, for me, just knowing who I am as I know who I am, and recognizing this is interesting what God's doing.
As I've gotten to know Jack, I've seen that he treasures her, listens to her, and hears her heart. When Jack called and said, would it be okay for me to ask your daughter to marry me? I said, well, if Charity says yes, I will say yes, because she can make good decisions, and she's made good decisions in her life.
Ended up recreating our first date and ending up in the Wheaton Bible Church parking lot. My older son, Xander, called. Of course, I arranged this and said, hey, Dad, just checking to make sure you're okay. And oh, by the way, Charity, I think my dad has something to ask you. And then, okay, bye. And then I got out of the car and went around the other side and got down on my knee and professed my love for her and my desire to spend the rest of my life with this woman. And luckily she said yeah. I feel incredibly lucky. I feel not lucky. I feel blessed. This whole time I have been, time after time after time when I'm in prayer, I feel like God is hugging me through Charity. And I can't believe that she was willing to give me a shot, much less, fall in love and agree to marry me. I just feel like the luckiest man in the world. She's amazing. Here we are, about to get married, and we're in our house. I mean, this is another blessing that God's provided. And
the idea of like creating a home alongside you and in this space and in this community, in this world, and a relationship too, a marriage that can be a representation of Christ and his love for the church, and just the love that God has for us as people, is an exciting thought, like to know that we can do that together. I believe our life really will be like a beautiful dance where there's a great lead and hopefully a good follow.
A great follow. Charity's an amazing follow.
And I do think that'll make our life a beautiful dance that can be appreciated by us, that we can enjoy that, and that others can also see and enjoy, and be able to see evidence of the Lord in and through our relationship and our lives.